Thanks, Chris. Come on up. So this is it's really a twofold panel. It's going to be about sort of social connectivity of the fans with the league, with the teams, with the players as a whole. And then the second screen experience. You're watching games. Are you watching it on your iPad? Are you conversing on an app as you're watching the game? So really the social element of sports, particularly football. We'll go through. I'm going to let my panel introduce themselves, and I really like the interaction that we had on that last panel. I hope that this panel sort of continues that conversation. I want it to be more of a conversation. So, again, I'm Don Povia. In addition to BWB, I'm a blogger with HuggingHaroldReynolds.com. So I kind of see it on all ends, social. But we'll start down the end with Brian Bassett.
Hi, I'm Brian Bassett. I write for the Jets blog, which is a part of Sportsnet New York, which is a kind of regional sports network in New York's website, TV station and website.
Cyd Zeigler from Outsports, the worldwide leader in gay sports.
Wait, didn't you have Toronto? What was your slogan?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
What? ESPN with a snap.
I'm Amanda Rykoff. I'm a New York City-based freelance sports writer. I actually grew up here in Los Angeles, and pardon me if I'm getting over a cold, which I got as a result of getting the flu shot. So what's the lesson? Never try to do the right thing. as he moves away.
I don't want to get sick. My name's Tim Shaw. I'm a Penn State graduate. I just finished my 6th year in the NFL with the Tennessee Titans.
And I'm Bernie Kim. I write and produce pieces for Fox Sports. I currently work on Fox NFL Sunday. And I also found out that I'm an editorial consultant, which is fun. I didn't know that until yesterday.
Well, again, we got a great panel here, and I'm surprised that we're on the third panel of the day and nobody's talked about what's been the biggest sports story that's eating it up. Of course, I'm talking about Lance Armstrong's admission. No, okay. That's my attempt at humor. But let's talk a little bit about the Manti story and his lovely girlfriend sitting next to us right here. It was my second attempt at humor. But let's talk a little bit about the role that social played in the development and now sort of the ongoing discussion of the story. So feel free to just jump right in and talk about, well, really, I guess he connected socially. But what are your overall thoughts on that as it relates to the web, to sports, and to sort of the fan interactivity with players? Go ahead, Amanda.
I think the Manti Te'o story is almost a sort of a parable for the power of social media, both in terms of building a brand, building a mythology, and then also the kind of the deconstruction and the tearing down, and how quickly that can happen, really in real time. The building up of the story and how easily information gets, content can be communicated so quickly now. I mean, you write a story and it goes out on every platform that you're connected, and then one retweet gets, the magnification and amplitude is remarkable. And I can tell you, just on Wednesday, I was actually flying here from New York. I was on Delta, so I did have Wi-Fi, and the guy next to me actually is a really super nice guy, golf fan. I was just monitoring Twitter the entire time I was flying, and I was trying to kind of explain to him why Twitter was so important to what I do as a writer and as a fan. And while I was kind of in this kind of tutorial, the Deadspin story breaks, and it was talk about the real-time example of a story that just you could see it blow through the internet in a matter of seconds. The responses, and then the Notre Dame statement within less than an hour. I mean, it was just. So I think that I'm not sure that we would be. I don't know if we really would be talking about this story, if this story even existed, if it weren't for the technology that's emerged in the last 5 years
and
to allow people to connect in this way.
Not just the Twitter, but I don't know if Eric is still in the crowd, but Eric from Deadspin was talking about how the story even came about. It was a tip from somebody to tips@deadspin.com that somebody said, oh, okay, I'll follow up on that. Jack Dickey was like, oh, okay, I'll go with it. So it was sort of a fan-generated story that Deadspin ended up, peeling the layers back. Anybody else want to comment or jump in.
I just like to say, I mean, it's obvious that everything that an athlete does, whether you're, maybe have 100 followers or if you have 100,000 followers, everything you say will just be heard.
It's on the record.
Period. And it's on the record, and it is a done deal. And I think when something so big happens, it just reminds me of, why do we take everything as truth when it first happens? I think that happens a lot, where something was taken as truth when it was never truth. And once somebody's off and running with it, that's truth. And I don't care what the truth is, but that's truth once it's out there like that.
And Tim, it's interesting, and there's a lot of perspectives I want to get from you. But as a player, somebody who is active on social media, is looking to build a brand. I was talking with some folks that you're associated with, and talking about wanting to be a speaker and be motivational, and you do a lot of stuff with the community. Do you feel an obligation to be transparent, to be open? How open do you feel an obligation to be to your fans?
That's a great question. I really do feel an obligation to a certain point. And I think as an athlete, and as anybody, if you put yourself out there on social media, you want to keep a certain level of privacy. So it's a balance. And for me, it's to the point of, yes, I will tweet, I'm at the Collegiate Bowl, but I'm not going to tweet, yep, heading down to the movie at 4:55. Anyone want to join
row,
me?
say hi.
There's got to be some type of balance there. And even for myself in a dating scene, like, I'm not going to put out there that I'm in a relationship in a heartbeat. It's like those things need to be kept private. There's certain things, family issues, or whatever it is that you feel, wherever you feel the line is. And for myself, I feel like anyone who is following me on Twitter or who is friends with me on Facebook, those people have chosen to want to hear what I have to say. So therefore, I have freedom to say what I want, but I also have the freedom to not say what I don't want. So I feel an obligation to definitely speak my mind, but I like to just keep that line very clear.
Cyd, I want to go to you about players speaking their minds, because it seems with your beat and what you cover and the focus of your site, a lot of times when players are saying something and maybe it's not the right thing to say, but as Tim said, everything's on the record. What sort of tool is it for you as a journalist and covering social issues? How much of what players say do you kind of take with a grain of salt, or do you kind of latch onto it and develop a story from it?
Well, for us, luckily players, a lot of them have not learned what not to say on Twitter yet. So they say what's on their mind. That's awesome, because what's on their mind is often, terribly homophobic things and slurs that end up driving stories. And
it's a lot more interesting than a politically correct
statement. It's a little, when Tank Carter calls somebody a faggot on Twitter, like, okay, well, now we have a good story to chase after. So it's, but what's amazing is, Jordan Rodgers, right? He's here, and he said some stuff previously that wasn't so hot. But when I get the opportunity to stand there and talk with him, and he explains it, it's when you're able to use more than 140 words to explain what you're saying and what you mean and the context and everything. As a journalist, you have to ask the questions, right? You can't just take, somebody used this word. There might be other things behind it. He didn't use that word. But I think as a journalist, you can't just take the word. You have to chase the story.
Right.
You can break the news that he used it, but you didn't break the story necessarily. There's a story behind it.
You have to do what Deadspin did, and
right. You have to dig,
and peel back, as opposed to all these outlets that didn't do their due diligence and do some simple fact checking as well. Bernie, let's talk a little bit about working for a premier network that you do. How do they, I guess, cover the story now that the story's been broken by a site like Deadspin, and seeing a lot of the peers in the industry sort of came up short? Does that affect the way it's covered going forward?
Yeah, I talked to a couple feature producers who deal with athletes and different sports people telling their stories, and one of them said, he's going to respect his red flags that he gets in the interviews a lot more, and really, even in delicate stories, you have to press on. You have to follow up with questions. You can't necessarily take everything at their word. But the other argument is a lot of the features we do on Fox NFL Sunday, we don't have someone narrating it. We just have soundbite. So it's these people telling their own stories. So maybe if they tell a story that's a fabrication, that's part of the story. If they're a liar, I mean, that's part of the story. We're not adding to the piece necessarily perpetuating anything. Maybe we're showing it perpetuating, but it's still these people telling their own stories. So yes, people I think are a little bit more wary of the red flags that are going to come up and press on. But overall, it's still these people telling their stories.
Has there been talk about, I guess, the kind of moving forward policy-wise of, okay, these are people telling us stuff. What obligation do we have, or do we feel we have, of following up and fact-checking things that players that you should be able to take, at face value? Is there a policy shift of the way it's
I don't know that. I'm not really in the feature producing kind of things on with the players and whatnot, but I know that I talked to two of the producers, and there might not be a distinct policy, but there is definitely a hey, watch yourself. And it's one thing if it's a story like, hey, I found $10 on the street today, or it's another thing if you're talking about a girlfriend that doesn't exist,
right.
Or a death situation, which is something you can follow up on. So it's kind of a case by case thing. I don't know that there's going to be a policy, but it's definitely open people's eyes to what people say.
And Brian, you're sort of a hybrid type guy. You're a blogger that works for a main media source. You, as a content producer, I mean, how much are you monitored? How much leeway do you have? And what's been your sort of takeaway from all this?
I guess I've been kind of knee deep in some other stuff. The Jets, I cover the Jets pretty much every day of my life, and they're in the midst of their GM search. I actually am the one who, it's not official yet, but it looks like this guy from Seattle, John Idzik, is going to be the new GM. I was the one who broke that. Before Adam Schefter did, I did. And so it's not official yet, so whatever. But
didn't Rick Riley break that?
but the thing is, I guess what I'm
yelling at me to make sure that I'm telling everybody that Brian Bassett's the one that broke that.
That's right. Yes. So basically, but what I've learned through this is like, I don't ever want to do that stuff again. Like, I don't want to try and break stories because I was kind of wrong a couple weeks ago about something else, and it's not worth it. Like, for me personally, to put myself through that. So kind of being in a blog, like having a blog sensibility is a lot of what I do. Certainly there's stuff that I hear, and I will kind of, I think I'm gonna. Or I generally do kind of put it out there softly. I'm not like stating definitively, this is the guy, or they're going to sign this guy or do whatever. But there is a line where it's like, well, how much are we driving the story, or are we kind of watching the story develop? And so, like, for instance, like Manny Te'o is not a guy I really cover all that much, but certainly, since kind of the bowl game, you can't miss it. Yeah. But you watch that, and I would say, like, what? If I was covering, like, Notre Dame kind of passively as a blogger, I would have fallen right into those stories. And so yeah, it's all about where does this come from, and how are we trusting the initial source, and do we just take the initial source as true? And so that's a part of what I do. Is part of it has to be watching the story develop, but part of it also has to be kind of cycling back on it a little bit, even a little bit, for the sake of the fans, because the fans want to know what the real story is.
Yeah, I want to go ahead, Amanda.
It's funny. I feel like we may have had this conversation at maybe the first Blogs with Balls, back in the basement of Stout in June of 2009. The whole notion of first versus right. Yep. And I think we are at that point where
I think
you'd really rather
we had it back then, and I think we've had it every event since.
And it still comes up, and I do think that I was at another event recently where we were talking about how there's so much great content out there now, and I do think that there's just a race to have a different story, and I wonder if this is just because there's so many people out there that are chasing all the different stories that maybe. This just seemed like a great story to share, and the myth just kept building and building, and no one was going to think, well,
Yeah.
Why would you lie about something like this?
Sure.
You know, I mean, I think that's.
I want to talk a little bit about those sensibilities. I mean, we talk about bloggers, particularly the three on the end there, and look at it, kind of frame it a little differently too, is, as bloggers, as people that, started as a passion. I mean, you are, citizen journalists, if you will, that, you're covering the Jets because you love the Jets. You cover the Yankees in 24 because you love those things. Cyd, you're covering something, sports in general, but with a perspective that didn't exist, wasn't out there. But similar to the question that I posed to Tim is, you each have a couple thousand Twitter followers yourself. So there is that obligation too, but, you're part of the sort of public eye as well, as much as Tim is. So what you're saying, as he alluded to, you're on the record as well, not just as a journalist, but, public figures with fans in your own right. I mean, do you ever look at it that way and what you're saying and making sure that, not just from professional standards, but from personal standards, I have people who, as he said, selectively click to follow me because they care about what I'm saying. So as public figures yourself, what's your take on the rise of social media? I mean, the first Blogs with Balls, we were talking about Twitter, and we had to spend first 3 panels explaining to people what this new technology was, and this was like 3 or 4 years ago. It wasn't that long ago.
Do you want me to jump in? Yeah. I think that, it's interesting because I also just, the last 2 years I was a writer I was a regular contributor to ESPNW.com. And so as a result, I was obviously under much more strict rules about what I could and couldn't say, and, certainly ESPN and social media policy and all that. But so now, the last month, I've been a free agent. I still feel very strongly that even though there was a lot said about the ESPN social media policy when it came out, and I still think it was for the best in terms of kind of think before you tweet. I do think, yes, I consider myself a fan. I consider myself a writer. I consider myself, a member of the Twitter community, and I have nearly 8,000 followers, and many of them are friends, some of them are family, but a lot of them are people that do look at me. I mean, it's funny how I have had to kind of change that image within the way that I think of myself. People think of me as a trusted individual in the world of sports, whether, for good or ill. And they come, they send me notes, asking me if I have inside scoop on something that's going on. And I say, I don't, but they, but they ask me. So that reminds me on a daily basis that you do need to be very careful in that way that you use Twitter to communicate even your own thoughts. Even if you're tweeting something that happened right now, you need to provide a little bit of context. You need to provide a little bit of explanation because, again, we live in a soundbite world, And as you said, the 140 characters are great, but they also can be very, very tricky because there isn't context around it. It's a moment.
Cyd, I want to follow up on that. You added another layer to the Manti Te'o story. Larry Brown, who was up here earlier, I saw he reposted it and talking about sort of how things start tumbling and getting viral. But what was the impetus behind that? Was it something that you're just kind of, do you know something, or is it a hunch, or is it the same thing? Let me scratch the surface and see what happens. But again, you're adding another level of a complex level on top of an already complex story.
Sure. So I remember Wednesday afternoon going on Twitter and seeing T.O. and girlfriend and hoax, and I thought, oh my God, Terrell Owens came out of the closet. And, that was my first finally. No. But my first instinct was I got to tweet that. Oh no, wait a second, let me go check. And then immediately my phone rang. And I got a text message, and another phone call came in. I was talking to that person. It was all these reporters calling me, is he gay? 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 And I just said, well, I don't know, but there are so many people asking me. I got questions, high school friends emailing me. You think this guy's gay? My dad called me. Oh, I don't know. So I just wrote a story. This is the question that I'm being asked, and I've never been asked that question so many times about one athlete in 4 hours. So I just wrote an article. I said in the article, Here's what's interesting. I said in the article, I don't know. I have no evidence. I know that people are asking me this question. Here's the story. You know, this is if I was a closeted Mormon playing football at a Catholic school, I might have an impetus to create some crazy story. But what's interesting is that got turned around into Cyd Zeigler says Manti Te'o is gay, which is not what I said. So you have to be very careful. And I kind of figured that would happen, but I knew what I had written. I did not take that position. I was just repeating what me as a reporter and a blogger was seeing and hearing. And Salon said as my theory, that theory that they attributed is the most likely scenario. So, but it is interesting that, you know, people will take what you say and twist it around very quickly. And one of the things about this story that nobody's really talking about, the reason that Twitter is driving this story is because there is no story. Like that nobody's ahead of the story. Their team is not ahead of the story. They haven't explained the story. So everyone is just guessing about what the story is because they have not filled in any blanks.
Yeah. Tim?
Just want to say, it's funny that as a member of the media, you say that your words are twisted around because as an athlete, that's what we worry about a lot. You know, we worry about what we say. They're never going to get it right. They're going to twist my words. So it's interesting and actually kind of makes me feel a little better that you guys get your words twisted around too.
Hey Bernie, I want to jump to you a little bit. We're talking about journalists, and again, 3 years ago there was no one on Twitter, and I think what we want to do is sort of transition into the second part, and that's the game watching experience, the community experience, not just covering stuff, but looking at stuff in real time as it's unfolding, not just stories, but games themselves. I mean, games are inherently a social activity. Bernie, somebody mentioned the ESPN policy. It seems now that anytime you turn on a broadcast, there's the broadcaster, there's the analyst, and there's their Twitter handle right underneath them. How much is that checking off a box as opposed to encouragement for them to interact with the viewers and the fans at home?
Well, I think for Fox has really embraced the connection that fans and viewers can have with our talent. And I'll give you an example. Mike Pereira is a great use, I think, that Fox has of social media, where here's a guy that knows every rule in the book, and it's a thick book of rules, and he knows every line of that book immediately and without hesitation. And so now he has his, if you watch on a Sunday and you have a question about a call, you don't just sit there and argue with your buddies about it. You can hop on Twitter, you can directly tweet at him, Mike, what's up with this call? Was that pass interference? Was that this? Was that that? And he's in there watching all the games, and he has a social media person with him from our department, and he can answer every single question and does pretty much answer every single question that's asked to him.
He doesn't answer mine for some reason.
Well, I'll tell Brittany to make sure that it gets relayed. But, somebody's reading every one of those questions. I think that's one of the big disconnects as a fan is that there's so many rules. I don't even know, Tim, if you know every single rule in the rule book, to perfection, right? And he plays the game. So as a fan, there's still people learning the game. There's still people that just don't know the game. And so that's one way that Fox uses social media to connect the fans.
I think he's a great example, and he's one that I was going to bring up. And, I guess I had questions as to the authenticity of it. Was this, again, just window show? Does he do it? Is it sort of scripted, produced in the back where, okay, here's a call, let's kind of, all right, so-and-so, get your buddy to tweet this question.
Well, I mean, no. He gets legitimate, believe me, the NFL fans are the most passionate, in our country and around the world. And he'll get legitimate questions. I'll tweet him from a game because I could go out there and ask him, but I've tweeted him out the tuck rule before and he's responded. But yes, somebody is sitting there, legitimately reading him all the questions when he has a second, and he'll tell him he'll tell Brittany what to say. So maybe he's not typing him back, but he's certainly engaging.
Brian, as a guy who watches as a fan and blogs as a fan, but also works for a media company, anyone you see either within the organization or either your media organization or the football organization that you cover that's really stuck out of using some of these things effectively in game?
In game. It's a good question. I mean, there are some great, I'm just, looking at it from the Jets lens. There are definitely some fans who have really risen up, to kind of take the mantle of talking about the game as it's going on. And there are definitely a couple people. The Jets organization is interesting. They were one of the first teams that really kind of moved to Twitter. Kerry Rhodes, when he was with the Jets.
Thank you, Gary V. Right?
Gary V. If just look up Gary V. He's a huge Jets fan. So there's definitely a lot of like fans who are into Twitter and that sort of thing. But I guess there's no one that like really sticks out. I mean, I certainly use it in game to talk about things as they're going on, opinions, that sort of thing. And it's a fantastic way to do that. If you're not at the game or you're not, at a sports bar or whatever, it's a fantastic use of the tool.
We've talked a lot about Twitter. I mean, pretty predominantly it's been about Twitter. I mean, is that sort of the de facto? I mean, I know a lot of, you get solicitations as bloggers. I mean, I get them from apps and different things. Is like, this is like Twitter for the sports fan. Mm-hmm. And my answer is always, well, isn't Twitter for the sports fan? What do you need something? I mean, is Twitter, because of its nature, sort of that go-to and because of the user base, is there anything else out there? I know Brian and I both use Sports the Apper, trying it out. But again, it's integrated with Facebook and Twitter, the two fallbacks. Is there anything besides Twitter that connects fans like that during the game?
The only other thing I've really heard of is, I don't even know if it's still, I think it might have gone belly up, but it was, I think Charlotte, there was a company called Other Screen, and they did everything, not just sports, but I believe it was also Golden Globes or that sort of thing, and they kind of had an ongoing discussion. But I think that's the thing, right? Is like we're just seeing now, like you're saying, this is very nascent technology, and so you've got Twitter, and then you've got amazing things. The first time I saw like DirecTV for iPhone, I thought it was like elven magic or something. Like it was absolutely amazing, like to see. Oh my God, I can watch this like while I'm walking with my wife through the park. Like literally I could do that. And so like I think that what's going to happen is, right, there are certainly applications that are out there, but it's like you have these kind of core functionalities of like games, scores, that updates of the scoring and kind of box score. You've got messaging, Twitter, Sports Yapper, those sorts of things, video, and then, but I don't think we've seen anything that's really started to combine those, or broadcast radio stuff. But there needs to be tools like if ESPN, if they're not working on it now, like they should be working on a way where you can listen to the game, through ESPN radio, but also be tweeting through the same application.
Bernie,
that's the sort of thing.
Yeah, Bernie, from a network perspective that certainly has a contract broadcast games. Is that seen as sort of competition to, I guess, TV rights and exclusivity on that end, or is it being embraced as, well, this is the next wave, it can be complementary, we might as well get out in front of it?
It's not seen as a threat in any way. I mean, nothing beats watching the game, but it's something that we're embracing as complementary. It's absolutely to get information out, to get maybe little side things that our hosts have to say while they're watching the games, while our pregame or halftimes aren't on the air. It's certainly used as something complementary, or even just advancing. Maybe Jay Glazer will have a story in the pregame, and it gets addressed during the game that he's talking about. Then that can get retweeted out. It's definitely embraced as a complementary tool.
Yeah, something just to pick up. Twitter obviously is, to me, it's like the ultimate sports bar. It's the online sports bar. You don't have to deal with all the hassles of the sports bar, where you can still share your opinions and hear the opinions of others that maybe you don't want to hear. But it's just that, to me, was my kind of aha moment about 4 years ago when I really started jumping in. But I think there's always this question of how to monetize the fan engagement aspect. I mean, obviously none of us are being paid per tweet or per retweet or per @reply.
Not yet.
Something that I've been kind of
I'm working on that in my professional
something that
life,
I've actually
Tim,
been kind of checking out lately is a new app called Preplay. It's based in New York, and they actually have deals with MLB and with the NHL, and that one is actually going to launch next week, right after the season actually starts. And it's predictive gaming, so it's an app on your. It's right now. It's just for the iPhone and iPad. I think they're launching Droid next month, but it's basically a way for you to challenge both yourself and your friends to predict what's going to happen in the game. So you can watch if you're watching the NFL playoff game. If you're watching, if you think if it's 2nd and 6 for the 49ers, at the Atlanta 45. What's the play? Is it going to be a running play for less than 5 yards? Is it going to be
Sounds like a gambling act.
Is it going to be a turnover? You can then double down and say, if it's a turnover, is it going to be a fumble or an interception? And it's actually it's really cool because you can play your you can play your friends, you can play strangers, and you can also chat. And the other thing that I think is actually, to me, that, again, it's all about the monetization aspect, and to me, where I think they really it's very cool. It's real time in conjunction with the game. So when the game goes to commercial, the pre-play game goes to commercial with it, with an ad from one of their sponsors. And then, of course, there's click-through technology, which is great for the sponsor. So I do think we are just now, to me, this is the first one that I've seen, because I've been sent, how many times have you been sent, emails or pitches from all these things? And you're like, I would never use this. But I'm a fantasy sports addict. Yeah. And to me, this is like almost the next level of fantasy, because once you've set your lineups and you're just, you're freaking out about why do they insist on throwing the ball, when you have Adrian Peterson as your running back?
Right.
You can at least now get engaged in a different way.
They got to get Aaron Schatz on board with this thing, because start overlaying the statistics on it.
Can I ask you a question? Hasn't NBC tried that before? Didn't they have a predict and it just didn't work? Well, people didn't gravitate toward it. I thought they tried it.
Was it on computer or like app?
It was your laptop, I think. So or maybe that was
like less.
One thing, I'll switch gears to a different sport that I found was like immensely valuable, and I wanted to get a perspective from Tim from an NFL standpoint. I'm not a NASCAR fan. I'll give it a shot. I don't hate the sport, some people might call it. But I was at a friend's house, guy from Carolina, real big Dale Jr. fan, and through a paid service, he essentially had on his laptop the radio communications between the pit crew, the team, and the driver. So as we're watching it on TV, you hear the conversation that his favorite driver is having with his team, and having my friend there, having this there, explaining strategy, bump drafting, all this stuff that I never knew existed. It helped me understand the sport a little better by pulling things back. Can something like that, networks, teams, would that even be receptive in the NFL? Because I know fans want more access, and you have these mic'd up segments. But if there was something where Tim was mic'd up throughout the whole game, and you can go and sort of listen to Tim throughout the game and hear the game from the players' perspectives, sounds like a great idea. Networks, I think, would be into it, but would players want to give that? That's giving strategy away, giving things like that. How much can we supplement in terms of viewing content in a sport like that you play?
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't love a good mic'd up session where helmets are crashing and they're talking crap to each other in between the play? And it's funny because I'll watch an NBA game and I'm like, oh, I want to know what that coach is saying to that ref right now.
Well, you just got James Dolan. Did you see the pictures with the big mic things, trying to figure out?
Yeah, I mean, so those are things that we want to know as fans, and then of course, you just can't give away strategy. So NFL players, we get mic'd up maybe for our local show or even for a national show, but you just can't. The play calling, the terminology that we use, all those things are just going to be eaten up by opponents, and so. To have a filter, I just don't see a way that you could do it.
Yeah.
Filtering what can be heard and what can't. I mean, that's why you have somebody who has to edit it before it can be shown on TV.
And if it's on tape delay, what's the point?
Exactly. But I mean, the idea is amazing. Fans would love it, and even like I said, me for another sport, I would love that as well. But it's especially football. I don't know about other sports, but especially football. Our terminology is so key. Yeah. That if the other team knows a word that I'm saying, they're going to know what we're doing. And those are just things that we can't give away.
Right. Well, forget the players. The coaches are so paranoid that they cover their mouths when they speak in case someone is reading their lips. So mic'd up players with plays. I mean, I can't imagine.
Is there something, is there something on the horizon or something that's been booted around or something that you've seen, whether with Fox or another network that's, sort of groundbreaking or something, comparable to, what NASCAR was doing? Like, has anybody done something to enhance that viewing experience by using digital assets?
I don't know that that's in the works. If it increases the engagement, I'm sure it has maybe been tossed around, but I don't know specifically if that's been talked about.
The one place that I wonder if you could mic up the refs. I mean, there's actually more and more interest in the officiating of these games. I mean, they're not going to overhear strategy, but I wonder if people would be interested in hearing the refs talk. I don't know. It's
we should have
possible.
tried that out with the replacement refs. And
Yeah, exactly.
saw how that went. Tim, one more question, and then I'm going to open it up to the crowd. You're playing the game, and obviously you're not communicating in real time. But as you're playing the game, and you're playing against the Jets, and Brian's over there saying, "Oh man, that Tim Shaw sucks. I'm glad, he's on the Titans and not on the Jets." We talk about players.
Tim, I've never said that. Just want to be clear, I've never said
I'm going to check your Twitter timeline when we get.
But as a player, you personally, maybe someone you don't have to mention names or anything. How much do you pay attention to what they're saying? Say you miss a key tackle. It's easy to say, no, I don't care. But human curiosity, don't you go and say, all right, what happened on that play? What were they saying at that?
Well, it's really funny actually, because when we were playing the Jets, and I started the last 5 games of the season for us, and which I'm our special teams captain, so that's typically what I do and what I've done so well over my career. But I got an opportunity to get some real good defensive time this year. So we were playing the Jets. It's Monday Night Football, and I'm starting. I'm in man coverage with one of their players, and I'm in great position. Sanchez, who's threw 4 picks in the game, throws the. I have the guy covered so well that I'm like, he won't throw the ball. Well, he throws it right over my ear, where if I would have just turned and looked, I would have ran off with it. But he threw it. The guy catches it, walked into the end zone, and I was right here on the guy. Right. And after the game, and this normally doesn't happen to me because I normally am not in the spotlight that much, but after the game, I had some very hateful and nasty things on my Twitter line, like, thanks for,
because,
way to give up that touchdown. And we won the game, by the way. But I had these, and people, they care so much. So I actually I like that. They wrote me these things like, hey, thanks so much for giving up that touchdown. Just like hurtful thing, but like even like nasty words.
Can you respect
the
fact that, there's people that'll just put Tim Shaw, piece of crap.
Absolutely.
Or the ones that say, okay, at T Shaw, truth. They're telling you, they know you have that better chance of seeing it because they're at messaging you.
Sure.
So you get a little respect for them because at least they man up and say it to your quote unquote face.
You know what? Those are the fans, so they have their opinion, and that's great. But at the end of the day, yeah, I messed up. The guy scored a touchdown. But guess what? He gets paid too, and this is a tough game. So I'm going to make some great plays. I'm going to make some bad plays. Tell me how you feel about it. That's fine. I'm going to be a man and take it. If you want to hurt my feelings, I might shed a tear or so. But I like that. The fans care so much. They want to tell us how they feel. But I not that I went back and checked, but like it's just there.
They're coming to you. Right?
Yeah. Not that I had to go and find it. It was there, and a play specifically during the game. They'll tell you how they feel about it. And the reverse is opposite is the same as well. I block a punt. Oh, you just get nothing but love on Twitter. So it goes with the good, it goes with the bad.
Have you ever blocked a fan for crossing the line?
I've never blocked a fan. No.
I've been blocked by Thurman Thomas. I'll just put it out there.
What Jonathan
What did
Vilma?
you say to him?
Jonathan Vilma. He was saying something about Merriman, and I made a comment about Merriman's substance issues, and he put me on the top 5 of his idiot club, and then blocked me.
That's quite an honor.
We're going to open it up. Anybody have any questions? Go right ahead.
I freelance with sports social media events. So I'm looking forward to this panel. I have a couple of points and then a question for everybody. As far as apps go, there's the Paul Allen back sports stream that's becoming
Yes.
that has
Yes,
just
I've heard a lot about that one. Yes.
into play. I've heard a lot on Twitter about Biggle. It sounds somewhat similar to what you were talking about, Amanda. Cyd, I'm wondering, watching that whole thing unfold on Wednesday, I'm wondering if you were getting all of those questions because people were perpetuating that on Twitter. And then my actual question for everybody is, what is your perspective on Twitter
Well, the specific question, my dad's not on Twitter. So it was coming from, I think, and the first person to call me I know is not on Twitter. So I think they were just, I don't know, their gaydar was going off for whatever reason. And I think part of it's the lack of story. So Twitter or people's minds were filling in the blanks that Teo still has not filled in himself. Twitter wars, I don't know. I get. It's funny. I get called horrible things on Twitter, and I egg it on. It's kind of funny to me. So I engage wholeheartedly in them and just see how far I can get them to take it.
Tim, as a player, I mean, I joked around about blocking anybody. I mean, how much do you engage back, or is it just kind of a slippery slope? You start, and then it just keeps perpetuating itself?
I try to be careful. Even just somebody saying, "Hey, great to see you," or "Good," it's like even my friends. Yeah. I try not to like send out so many personal that only is directed at one person tweets. So
on a public forum.
Yeah,
like that,
exactly. Right? Where it's like I'm saying, "Hey, good to run into you today at the airport." Like. To me, that's not what Twitter's for. So I try not to do that. I do it occasionally. I try to keep it to a minimum. But as far as Twitter wars, you start a conversation with someone, and then it's like, next thing you know, you're on your timeline. You're like, God, this guy's filling up my timeline with unnecessary stuff. Like, no one wants to read that. So I try to keep it to a minimum. I have got caught up a couple times, arguing with somebody, but
learned your lesson.
Yeah.
You have any other questions? Good. It's a good question. I'm just going to repeat it. The question was, in terms of technology and some of the things we discussed, what about the idea, he said he's a firefighter and they have helmet cams, about the NFL implementing something player perspective, helmet cams. And Bernie, I'll let you start. I would ask, is that something that the networks would drive or the league? What do you think?
I think it's for Fox. Fox is always looking for the a different perspective on the game, and we're always putting microphones places, cameras places, like we did for baseball. I think if it hasn't been explored already, it's something that they'd have to get the league to sign off on. I'm sure our ops people love the idea of putting cameras out there, but I think that's a league discussion, more so to get them to sign off on that kind of thing. Maybe Tim would know if they try to do that.
Greg?
I don't know if we tried, but I think we would like it. I don't think the players would have a problem with it,
as long as it doesn't obstruct or interfere with.
With technology, you should be able to. You can make that happen, right?
The one thing I do wonder, and I think Dee will be talking about it probably a little bit in a minute here. Would it in some way make the player safety issues worse by having that instead of padding or whatever would be there? So I think that would obviously be a big issue for the NFL to have to sign off on.
Yeah, why add? I mean, talk about layers of complexity. Yeah. Great. The question was Twitter wars, if you will, about who broke a story and who's sourcing whom. Bernie, we talked a little bit last night about, you got a guy like Jay Glazer and a guy like Adam Schefter, right? Chances are they could very well be, working on the same story, and then who broke it first because they're timestamped. And then when somebody broke it first, ESPN got some flack for the fact that they'll say, sources say, and implying that it's their sources when it might in fact be Jay Glazer. So the question was sort of thoughts in general on, I guess, protocol and just observations.
Well, I think journalistic protocol would be to credit who credit it and don't just say source just so you can say you have a little bit of a piece of it. In terms of Glazer, he, in my mind, is the best at breaking stories, and he knows exactly when a story is his. And he has no problem giving out credit to an Adam Schefter or a Chris Mortensen or whoever. So, from the Fox side, he knows when ESPN is taking one of his scoops, slapping source on it, and not giving him due credit. So for Fox, like we have no problem giving out credit where credit is due. And I was actually kind of proud of ESPN for properly accrediting Deadspin for this awesome story that's come out this week.
I think, it's absolutely a level of currency. Like, I mean, I know because I cover the Jets, like beat reporters will, I mean, not all the time, but they'll say, hey, I was the one who had that first, and they'll want me to change what I've written on my site. And I'm like, well, I just was in my timeline. I'm sorry. Like, didn't realize that you did it 10 minutes before the other person. Because the PR person for the Jets called you first, like whatever, like So I guess my thought is, for them, like it's big to have it up there, and obviously you're going to get more followers from doing it. So I agree. Like I certainly see the importance of it. The fans generally don't care; they just want it to be right for the most part. They don't care who got it first, and there's so many places they can get it from. They just want it to be right. But, if you're that person, absolutely, you're going to get more cred and more, follower currency for breaking it first. So you have an incentive to do it.
Okay. Well, before we break, and D. Smith is going to come up and talk about player safety in the NFL and wrap us up, and then we'll have some lunch. I want to thank everyone for being here. But before we break our panel, just want to go down the line and, we'll call it Follow Thursday. If you could recommend one player, one organization, executive, who would you recommend following? The Jets.
Yeah, I kind of like Greg Aiello. I mean, I know him. I like him. And sorry if you guys don't. I don't know what the relationship is, but okay. I get a lot of my news from him. So
his news, right?
What?
No.
Yeah. No. I mean, I get a lot of my like, oh, that's okay. Got it. Sorry.
Amanda? No.
I'll just say, no one's really going to care here, but there is a great guy who he follows specifically Jets social media, and his name, it's E_man, M-A-N, E-man, and he's awesome, and he's a huge Jets fan, and he goes to every game, and he does tailgates, and he's very into social media. He's great, and he's a friend, so I like following him and kind of conversing with him. And George Adala.
I'll give you time to
Come
think.
back to me. I'm really
I got a guy. His name's Anthony Adams. He went to Penn State with me, and he also played for the Bears for about 5 years, played for the 49ers 4 or 5 years. This guy is one of the funniest guys I've ever been around, seen on Twitter, Facebook. He's now making videos of, like, the most random thing. He's a big 300-pound guy, and he's doing, like, 300-pounders, like, Dancing with the Stars. Like, he's doing, like, 300-pound gymnastic. Like, he's just doing random funny stuff, and he just hilarious.
Check it out, Bernie.
I wish I had a non-Homer answer, but I want to go back to Mike Pereira, because I'm just an NFL fanatic. And so I need to know why a rule is a certain way, or there's so many little things that happen in a game that I want explained, and he is the best source of information for that. So I just think he's a great follow as a fan.
All right, Amanda, you're on the
It's funny. I wish we actually were having this conversation last week, because I've been following this guy since before it was actually the biggest thing to do. But Tim Burke at Deadspin, Bubba Prague. I mean, he is also a friend, but what he does, and I mean, when he's not breaking these amazing stories, when he's not doing that, he watches every game and does screen caps of these moments of, like whether it's a facial expression or, does a great, he gets those up so quickly, and to me, it complements the in-game viewing experience by providing it. So when you see that and you say, oh my God, I need that, and I need to show it to everyone, within 10 minutes, he's got the GIF up. Nice. Of that play that you were just talking about, and so it helps enhance that. When you say that's a Mark Sanchez thing,
Butt fumble.
Exactly. That's so Jets or hashtag Mark Sanchez thing. What that was.
We actually joked about John Boyce from SB Nation hijacking the Twitter hash mark because he tends to do that. I like him. I like Dan McQuaid is a Philly guy. And talk about gifts, like something happens in a Phillies game, like, you know, there's like Shane Victorino falling over himself 3 times trying to throw the ball. Like Dan's got it up there right away. But I'm going to go with on Instagram. I like following guys on Instagram. I think the NBA teams do it very well in showcasing their brands. Talk about Philly guys. I like, for some reason, it's kind of like a train wreck, but Deshaun Jackson's like Instagram stuff. It's like, I don't know, it's feeling like yelling like, get healthy, get on the field and play and stop doing this stupid stuff. But the best part of Instagram is like, I think that the people writing that and the comment threads that come of like, why are you taking this stupid picture? You guys stink, blah, blah, blah. So I think any athlete's Instagram stuff is just as entertaining as anything else. So can we have a round of applause for our panelists and all the panelists throughout the day? Thank you certainly to the NFL Players Association and you know, their continued support of what we do, and obviously we continue to support what they do. So thank you for having us, and I'll bring George up here, and I think he'll introduce the